Here we go. Welcome to another episode of Real Talk with Real Man. I'm your host, Josh McGlon. Not running for election today, but there is an election today. So I figure I wear my shirt. Co-host Big Steady, how you feeling?
I'm here.
I'm here. I knew you.
I'm here.
Special guest with us today. If you may, Pastor Pat, maybe not. Pastor Pat Ward, counselor. What you can tell me all the titles and stuff you have, all the
There's an alphabet soup behind there, but counselor's fine. I help people sort out all sorts of problems. I help people untangle all sorts of knots. So, but I was a pastor in Oxford for about 14 years at the Orchard, and it's a church I still love and glad to be a part of. But now I get to talk to much smaller crowds, 1-on-1, 2-on-1. But I like that. All right, it's fine with me.
Gotcha. Yeah, well, as you know, we break the ice a little bit. We already broke it some before we started, but get the nerves out in the recording because I do this all the time, but I still get nervous when I look at myself talk.
That's a good thing.
Yeah, I guess that means it's working, right? But anyway, I'm gonna start with you, Pastor. I'm sorry, Pat, Mr. Pat, Counselor Pat.
I've been called much worse. Go ahead.
Well, let's start with you. Anything interesting or good happened to you today or this week or recently?
Let's see. Well, it was Easter weekend, and I noticed that we were worn out after Easter weekend. I was more tired after just being a father for Easter weekend than when I was a pastor. We had 6 Easter egg hunts for my kids, and halfway through the last one, they just gave up. They were like, "We're tired. We're done. We'll get these tomorrow."
Gassed out.
So they had enough. So I didn't think you could do that to kids, but they were done. But it was fun. The weather was phenomenal this Easter. So, we got to see some extended family we hadn't seen in a year, and everybody hung out outside. It was real safe and easy, lots of fun. And, God couldn't have given us any better weather. So we were really blessed by that.
Yeah, it was nice. We had our first in-person service outside on Sunday. It was really nice. It was nice. What about you, Big Steady? Anything good or interesting happened to you besides you waking up this morning?
Yeah.
You use that one a lot, so I'm gonna let you.
Yeah.
It's a good reason.
Well, yeah, I just use that a lot when I just be trying to, stay off the I got people in the background being ignorant right now. I'm so sorry. Apologize, people. But I'm great, man. I had an experience yesterday that bothered me, but then over the night I worked it out, and then it was just like a little lesson to let me know that if something don't work this time, when you face it again, like in the book of James, when you face it again, I'll be able to master it. But I failed the last time, and it really hurt me. It hurt my feelings, but I made it. I'm still here though.
There you
go. Now
that
I woke up, I'm just still here.
We're gonna talk about feelings in a little bit.
Oh man, I didn't know that.
Oh yeah, you started us off.
That's a good segue.
Hey, well, that's what's up.
Well, let me pause the segue for a second and tell about something good that happened. Well, interesting, I guess. So my wife decided she wanted to get the kids. Well, my youngest son, he loves animals, so been begging for a dog or some kind of pet. And I was like, no, let's just wait until whenever. Just trying to push it off. So she decided she wanted to go pick up a baby chick from one of her friends. Oh my God! The first night, I'm pretty sure I still hear chirping in my ears every time. Every time I hear one little sound. But it's been interesting. It's turned into a little family pet, and we'll probably let it go when it gets too big.
Is it laying eggs yet?
No, it's still a baby.
Yeah,
it's still a baby. It's just now it's learned how to get. We got a kind of a Tupperware box, and it's learned to get out of there. So we had to build something, a barricade around it. And I'm like, well, this won't last much longer because I can't go another night with the cheap, 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 cheap.
Yeah. It's gonna be hard if that family gets attached to it. It's gonna be hard to fry that thing next Easter.
Yeah, well, I'll figure a way. Trust me.
You'll figure it out.
I'll figure it out. Well, all right. We'll get right into it. The segue from the feelings that he felt. And we all know it's difficult for men to express their feelings, emotions. It's tough. And we suppress them a lot. It's one of those things that we deal with. I think it's a great addition to, I almost forgot to talk about it because we talked about mental health, we talked about spiritual health, we're going to be talking about physical health. I was like, wait, emotional is a thing too. It's pretty big and it ties into all that other stuff. So I guess the first question we got is, what is emotional health? What do we define as emotions or emotional health as a man specifically, I guess?
Yeah. So I mean, I don't know exactly how to describe emotional health, but I do know what emotionally healthy looks like, and more than a destination, like something you arrive at and you get kind of the seal of approval. This is an emotionally healthy person. I think it's more of a mindset, and it's a mindset. Unfortunately, I work with a lot of men. It's a mindset, unfortunately, that men kind of lose track of from time to time, and I think what it looks like, and this is the mindset that seems to benefit the most people around men, is if I can understand what makes me healthy and pursue it, like actually put energy towards that. Healthy, what helps me grow and pursue it, and then also what makes me happy. And as long as it's not some kind of selfish pursuit that takes away so much from other people, as long as I know how to pursue that, and I don't expect anybody else to be in charge of my happiness for me. Like those are the three things that I think lead men into emotional health, or into being emotionally healthy. And I just think I think a lot of times we miss that, and I think we miss it for a couple of different reasons. Sometimes we shame ourselves into thinking it's selfish to pursue emotional health. Sometimes we've been in relationships where people have told us, the emotion side is not, that's not for you if you're a real man. Sometimes we're too busy. Sometimes we're too scared. We're trying to provide for our families, and so we don't really slow down to care about, what we've got going on. So there's a lot of reasons why that falls through the cracks sometimes.
Yeah, and I think I can't say when it started. I'm sure the beginning of time, where men have been, it's a stigma where we feel like we have to suppress our emotions because it makes us feel weak, or somebody else will call us weak, or it's associated with some type of inferiority.
Yeah.
And that's not true. I think it takes a real man to show his emotions and express his emotions. We do have to be careful with that as well, who we express our emotions to.
Right.
Because I know with my wife, it sometimes I feel like if I want to express my emotions, I still have this reservation because I have to maintain my status as the head of the house without, compromising, that dynamic of the relationship. It sounds complicated, I guess, because it is.
It is complicated. It is complicated. One thing that I learned a long time ago, and this is always stuck with me, is that I think part of the reason we have a hard time talking about emotional health is that it's kind of built on this faulty assumption. A lot of people assume that the opposite of manhood is womanhood, and the opposite of masculinity is femininity, that those two things are opposed to each other. But that's not exactly the truth. The real opposite of manhood is boyhood. And the thing that attacks, a man being a man or leading like a man, it's not necessarily, that there's an emotional side, it's that there's an immaturity in him sometimes. And so I do think that even if we have to talk about things that we struggle with, anxiety, depression, fear, grief, all those things, there's a way to talk about that, even from a mature standpoint of saying, like, hey, I can't deny this and be a healthy person. that's a very mature way to deal with emotions. It doesn't make us weak. It doesn't make us somehow missing something. And so I do think it's built on that misnomer. And maybe I love what you're saying, Josh, about like how do we begin to communicate along those lines without giving up some of the strength that we want to offer the people around us, or without giving up some of the leadership that we want to offer the people who are looking to us. So yeah, I think that's a really important line that we got to figure out how to walk.
Yeah, it's a thin line to tote.
Yep.
Big Steady, you were saying something earlier about something that happened to you recently that made you feel you got in your feelings, or it hurt your feelings.
Right.
Like,
Oh, you want me to talk about it? I can talk about it. It's little to someone else, but it was big to me.
Yeah, okay. I think it's gonna uncover something else. 'Cause I don't know about it, but I think it'll uncover something else.
Okay. The thing, like you were saying, like when you don't want to be emotional, people they jump from man to woman, and then you automatically weak. So I missed the ball yesterday. I missed the first ball in like a year. But I read the ball right. I know this don't make sense right now, but it will in a second. I read it right, but I lost it in the light. But I couldn't go up to the dugout when we came back in and say I lost it in the light, because that was gonna make me weak. That was gonna make me have an excuse because I missed it. But so instead of going up there saying that, I just locked up. I shut down from everything. And when I locked down from everything, my mother shows up. And as she shows up, I don't speak properly because I'm mad, but I have to keep it inside because I got to be this boisterous man. And so it bothered me all night because he said, you got to be able to have somebody to talk to. And so where I've become in my life, where I've came in my life to this point is, instead of me holding stuff in, I'm just going to just let it out. Yeah. So I was at the end of the game, I was like, man, y'all, I lost that game, man. That's my fault. And they was like, no, you didn't lose it. But when I said it out loud, I got a release because I was catching myself closing off again from a ball, which to somebody else might be small, but it was serious to me because I love this game. Mm-hmm. And
we're talking about
bothered me. Huh?
We're talking about softball, to be clear.
Oh, sorry, guys. Softball.
Like
swinging the bat ball. Yeah.
I thought it was a metaphor at first, and I realized you really were playing softball.
Yeah, my fault. I was really playing, and I missed it and all that. But the thing was, the gist was, when I opened up and told how I felt, and I'm on a team full of men, they just came back and they were like, dude, lift your head up, laugh it off, keep moving. But I've been so steadfast in my walk that I wasn't in a position to see if I really felt anymore. So the fact that happened let me know that people do care and people do listen. People listen to hear sometimes instead of to speak. That was my point, and I was able to sleep because if I hadn't, it would have drove me crazy all night long.
Yeah, you would have been replaying that in your mind over and over again?
Oh, well, yeah, I played it a couple times, but it didn't have the power. It didn't have the power that it had. I'm talking about my whole game was off after that. I couldn't hit. I couldn't do nothing. And that's too much control.
Right.
So the point is, off of your last statement, you got to be able to breathe, just have fun and relax. And take that in real life, because everybody not playing ball. They might come home and they might come to me talking about a bill that they have, that they don't have to supply for their family. And I need to be able to tell them, because if I'm locked up, I can't help you.
Right.
I'm just as messed up as you.
Right.
So my point was, I was in that emotional state, but I bounced back. And the old me would have still been on. I would have been quiet today if I was the old me, because I would have shut off and I wouldn't want to hear nothing y'all got to say, because y'all would have been wrong. Even though you was right, I ain't want to hear it.
Right.
But that's just my little. I hope it made sense, but that's just my.
Yes, it does.
Yeah, and when we open up to other people, we give them an opportunity love us, to accept us, to cheer for us, and to really see us as we are. I mean, I think that's the thing. A lot of times you ask people who feel like, oh, I'm not really okay with emotions, and I can't really tell anybody, that messing up on this baseball play somehow got up in my head. And I usually ask people like, well, how would you react if another player said that to you? Well, you would probably say, hey man, it's okay. You would encourage them. You're a decent person. It doesn't even take a Mother Teresa to be able to react in the right way in
Right.
that circumstance. That's how you would react. Give other people the chance to react that way to you. And most people find that 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 there's grace there. There's warmth there. I read a book a long time ago that said, we really struggle in relationships until we come to the fact that we have needs that other people can fill for us or that can help us with.
Mhm.
And it was actually a book about like leaders, people, especially people in ministry, really struggle with that. They kind of come to a place of denial about the fact that they have needs, whether they're relational needs or emotional needs or even spiritual needs. And so nobody really knows them, and they don't really know anybody else, because the atomic level of relationships is needs being expressed and needs being met. And so a lot of what we miss out on by not being willing to share those with other people is we miss out on people really knowing us and really caring about us, and an opportunity for us to be cared for and loved in that way.
Yeah, that struck something with me there when you said just about giving other people the opportunity to know you better. And if you're the head of the house and you're trying to do you're basically you're most men, we're going to be, family first or wife, whatever the dynamic is in the house. So I'm thinking about my kids, thinking about my wife, whatever them comes first. And I get pushed to the wayside. I even pushing myself to the wayside, not even giving anybody else the opportunity to sow into my life, sow into my, because what had me wanting to start this whole men's mental health series talking about it is I came to a crossroads myself a few weeks ago, and I had nothing else left to give.
Wow.
I had given to my family so much, given to my wife, given to my business, and given to this show, other people, just so much, and I was empty
Oh
because
wow.
I didn't give anybody else the opportunity to give back to me. And this guy right here souls into my life all the time. But at the place I was at, I wasn't I wasn't in a position for anybody to give to me because I was so hell bound on, light at the end of the tunnel, trying to push to the end goal for my family's success, savings and paying, getting out of debt and all those types of things that men take on their shoulders. And I missed out on everything in between. No, I
Yeah.
couldn't let my kids give to me. I couldn't let my wife give to me, and I had to stop and open back up.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not now. I'm much better place now, but I can't. There's no telling how many men are dealing with this out there
Yeah.
right now,
Yeah.
especially with the pandemic going
Oh
on.
my gosh. Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that, Josh. Um, I, I, this last year really has brought it out. I mean, I think this time last year, early April, late March. I mean, I don't know that I don't know that I have been scared as much as I was scared. At some moments when I was being honest during that time.
Mm.
And I lost my father. It's been about 15 years now, 16 years now, and I don't think I've ever missed him as much as I did in 2020. Just because there were so many times I was like looking over my shoulder, like, am I doing this right? Am I like, am I saying the right things? Am I making the right decisions? Am I thinking clearly? Like, what? I'm off the map here. And that was one of the things that was really, really big when I realized that in my life. And one of the things that I recognize about manhood, this is an idea I got from John Eldridge, who's written a lot of different books about manhood, is that manhood is not really something that we earn. So manhood is something that's bestowed upon us from another man. another man looks at us and says, hey, you've got what it takes to do this, or I see what you're doing and you're doing it right. And, you know, if you don't see this in other men, like men who grow up without fathers, or, you know, I grew up with a great father, but he passed away before I became a pastor, father, husband, counselor, man. And so there were times when when I went through manhood and I was like, am I doing this right? And, you know, when we get to a place where we don't have that person in our life saying, hey, you're doing this right, then we just start faking it. And we can't fake it for very long before that begins to affect the other people, begins to affect the relationships we're part of. It begins to affect who we are as business people or the kind of decisions that we make. And so, yeah, I mean, just acknowledging that and coming to the end of, you know, ourselves and realizing, man, I'm empty, or I'm more empty than I thought, is one of the most important places that we can be at, for sure.
I see you stirring, Big Steady.
Yeah, man, he tapped into something that I didn't say to anybody. Like the fact that he said that when you said that your father been gone for 15 years, I've been over it, my father not being there for me for maybe I've probably been over it for about 4 or 5 years. I've settled with it. I'm good.
Yeah.
But last night, when I went into that zone, you open up a space. Men open up a space where they block off, but it's leaving a hole right up in there for doubt. And then I was thinking all type of crazy stuff. Man, if my daddy was here, he could tell me this. But I know my mama up here cheering for me. But it's that secret thing that still, it's not an issue. But that's I don't care how old you get. You always want to know what that would feel like.
Right.
You want to know that. But man, you mess me up. You mess me up. That's all. That's all I'm saying, because men only talk about, when they do talk, they only talk about the surface. Yeah. And then I realized something you said earlier, or in your monologue right then, was you hit it on the head, and I was feeling it. Because now my head over here, I want to say something I want to say, but I'm not gonna get up into that. Oh man.
Yeah, he was just talking about what he just said about his, am I doing this right? I turn around and all this stuff is going on, and like we fake it till we make it. We just keep.
Right.
Yeah. There was something along those lines too, but it was something specific. But like you were saying, when we don't speak, this is it. When we don't speak, we don't let people really know us. And for 10 years, I faked this thing. Yeah. I act like I was okay. But I was functioning alcoholic. I was acting like I was good. I was acting like everything is hunky-dory. But when I started to really feel again, it's a scary feeling, because people then think you weak, especially your woman. You can't be too open with her, because then don't you supposed to be a man? Or men ain't supposed to just, especially, and then I look like I look. Just picture me walking up to you like, I'm hurt. I'm hurt and I need a hug. That's hard to do.
Yeah.
Especially for a man.
Right.
But I'm learned yesterday, I was just hurt, and I said, I'm hurt. My point was, you took me back. You took me back to something I couldn't explain that I'm out of. But how you said it really just made it plain and clear. And I appreciate you, sir.
Yeah.
Pastor, sir. Thank you.
You're welcome. Josh, I want to go back to something you said a second ago, because I think it's helpful. You talk about a husband being the head of his household. How do you define that? Like if somebody, if a young man was asking you how you define that, how do you define that?
For me personally, the head of the house is being the breadwinner first and foremost. Things can change, from there on, but as when you establish your household, you're the leader in just about every aspect that you need to be, as far as financial stability and spiritual stability. The spiritual head of the house, I've always been taught that. Being that force there, my wife said one of the things that attracted her to me was me being a provider. And that's one of those definitions of being the head of the house.
Yeah.
And that dynamic has changed a few times since we've been together. When we first got married, I had to have surgery, repair my Achilles. So, I was short-term disability, so she had to be the breadwinner. And sometimes those things change, but the head of the house are those things that I have, whatever I have been taught, whatever I establish at my house. And as long as you're leading your family in the right direction, you maintain that head of household
Yeah.
status.
I like that. That's good. I asked that question because I do a lot of premarital counseling. That was one thing that I loved doing when I was a pastor, and now I really love it as a counselor too, because we can get into some things. It's kind of people's last. It's like people's last stop for, let me check to see if I'm a whole person before I give myself to somebody else. And it's also a place where people really ask some hard questions about themselves at a time when they're not, the world's not falling apart.
It's
So
the walk on the green mile. It's the
that's
last
right.
walk before.
Walking the mile.
Yeah,
I
it's
like
the
that.
last walk before your sentencing for the end. But or it's the beginning of the next chapter of your life.
That's right. That's
And
right. And
my pastor, which is Steadfast's grandmother, she did my premarital counseling with my wife. And one of the things that I learned about myself, because she's known me since I was a baby, to 1, 2 years old.
mhm.
So she knows me better than my wife. So I figure I'm going into this thing like, oh yeah, she's gonna be on my side with everything. It turns out that I'm looking myself in the mirror more than I expected
Yeah.
in the premarital counseling session, and the several sessions that we went. And one of the things that I learned was that I was a little more selfish than I expected.
Mm,
I had to humble myself
yeah.
to to allow myself to be into that relationship, because if I didn't, then I it would have been a disaster.
Right.
Hasn't been
Right.
a fault, but it wasn't a disaster.
What a gift she gave you. I mean, it probably stung when she called that out
Oh
the
yeah.
first time or pointed it out, but what a gift. Yeah. When I see, this head of household thing comes up a lot, and for a lot of young couples, or especially a lot of men, they've gotten just enough of an understanding of that to know that's a responsibility, but not really to be clear about what that looks like, and not always to know what it looks like to do that responsibly. And so some people have seen it on one end of the spectrum, where the head of the household is the one that gets to decide what movie we watch and what we eat for supper, and they get to decide what the thermostat gets set on all the time, and that's what it means to be the man of the house. You control every aspect of it, and you rule it with an
I've got
iron
the app
fist.
on my phone, so I can take it.
You know what, it'll send you a push notification if
I
it gets
still
too
get
cold.
it, but
But
that's
then
another.
other people have seen it on the other end, and that
Yeah,
that they grew up in a house where there was just a lot of hen pecking, and a lot of browbeating, and a lot of just the husband being talked over, and that was a hard thing for him to see. And so when
yeah,
we try to sort out things like Ephesians 5 and 6, and what does that mean, like practically in a house, one of the things that I always talk about is, I think that as the head of the household, I can't expect anybody else in my household to be responsible for making sure we don't get stuck
yeah.
anywhere. We don't get stuck financially. We don't get stuck spiritually. We don't get stuck socially. We don't get stuck sexually. We don't get stuck communication wise. Like I can't expect my wife, or I'm not intended to expect my wife to keep us from um, getting stuck. She doesn't have to keep her eyes, scanning the horizon to make sure that we aren't stuck in one of those areas. That I'm gonna have that on my radar. I'm gonna keep
That's
an eye on that. The trick for a lot of people is, like, if you are getting stuck mentally or emotionally, how do you get unstuck, and how do you lead? It's kind of like what you said, Josh. Like when you got to the point where you were there, I had to learn that. We went through a really hard season. The first time I went to counseling was after we went through a really hard season at the church, and I noticed that I was having a problem. I was kind of outrunning my headlights, so to speak, when I was standing at the counter washing dishes, and I'd wash the same dish 6 times. And it wasn't like OCD, but I was just so distracted. I just kept watching it over and over again, thinking about what was going on. I was like, all right, I can't keep doing this. And that was a time when I was like, I don't know what getting unstuck looks like, but I'm going to keep pounding away at it until I do. And so, I was able to. I found a good counselor, and he helped me see some things that needed to be changed, and some ways that I just need to be listened to. And so it helped us get unstuck. And my wife and I are constantly in conversations about, like, if we get stuck emotionally, and I hope that you guys don't think that we just kind of walk around our house like sobbing all over everything. We're so freaking emotional, but we are talking about, like, hey, is this really what's wisdom in this decision, or is this anxiety, or how are you doing? Are you good? This has been a hard week. Or are we okay? What do you need this weekend? Do you need some time by yourself? Do you need me to take the kids, or do I need you to take the kids somewhere? Like, we do have those moments where we check in about that, just so neither one of us gets stuck, and we both get stuck in the same hole.
That's how you make it through those long winters and COVID. And when the love has dropped off a little bit, you built up, sort of a nest egg of conversation. It has to be a two-way street. Keep it open. And one of the things that helped me, I came to my wife. I was knocking on the door for a few weeks. I was like, man, I got to do something. I could just feel myself going down, like, physically, and I wasn't doing like a whole bunch of physical labor, because that was a time where it was snowing and raining and stuff, and I really didn't do much outside stuff. So I was like, something is not right. And she was like, let me take the kids for a weekend, and you get some time. I could have used probably some more time, but it was enough to jumpstart me and get back. But I wouldn't been able to do that if that communication was not open there.
That's right.
It's like, hey, I need this, or even being in tune with your partner, saying, even if they don't say anything to you, be like, hey, you good? You okay? And she does that to me. Same thing. We got to do that. And me and Mr. Steadfast here had a pretty big conversation at the beginning of this whole series. And he started his whole thing after he said his monologue entry. He said, "Are you okay?" And I was like, man, what define okay? But we had a whole conversation about it, and it unlocked some stuff in me. About stuff, that I dealt with in elementary school. And yeah, I was on my own little counseling session there with Mr. Steadfast.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think a lot of people, and you mentioned this earlier, like, why do men not express emotions? I do think that's a misnomer. I think men express emotions a lot. We definitely have a lot more than we express, but we express them a lot. We just don't always express them in productive, healthy ways. They come out as anger first and foremost. And I have this thing that I use in counseling a lot. It's a diagram of like an iceberg, and anger is the part that sticks up out of the surface of the water, and underneath is all the other stuff that usually is behind the anger. Anger is usually a secondary emotion. We feel jealous, so we act out of anger. We feel frustrated, but we act angry. Anger is a currency. Other people get in line pretty fast when we're angry, but if we're walking around the house jealous, nobody really pays us any attention, right? And so men act angry. Sometimes men get silent, and it's not a helpful emotion, but sometimes it's an emotion. It sounds like, Steady, that's what you saw in Josh. You were wanting to call him out. It's like, hey, it seems like you're kind of distant. You're kind of bringing some distance there. Other men, the emotion that they show, though it's not really an emotion, but it is a pattern of impulsivity. So even the things that they know are not good for them, or that they know are not good for their goals or their marriage or anything, they reach out to them impulsive and even addictive ways. I think you mentioned that a minute ago, Steady. So we see that too. And then men also express secrecy, and it starts with, hey, nobody would understand if I shared this to them. But then before long, what began as like, hey, I'm just going to hold this card, becomes a whole hand of cards, and it becomes a whole deck of cards. And before long, you see men who have it's why sometimes things come out and you're like, that guy did that, all that stuff. He had all that going on, and it started. You could trace that back to one little fork in the road where somebody said, "No, I can't ever tell this because somebody will be too disappointed or somebody will abandon me." And before long, we just kind of pick up more and more things that grow in the dark, and it can be pretty ugly. But that's the way. If we don't learn healthy ways to deal with emotions, that's the way we deal with them, and they can create disastrous results.
Yeah, you stirring down there, Big Steady.
Oh no, I was really trying to see how to ask. Like, I wanted to get my wallet and be like, "Do you take debit?" Because I'm really listening because you explaining stuff that I be trying to say to myself, but it's making sense. I'm like a sponge, and then trust me, like the whole you say you feeling frustrated, but it comes off as anger, or you feeling jealous. You're really jealous, but it comes off as you're really frustrated. No, you're jealous, but it come off as frustration.
Here's the output.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
The point is, what you lashing out about ain't what it is.
Yep.
Because you won't get under that iceberg. What? Got me? What? Okay.
And that's usually one of the first things. That's usually one of the first things I give couples is that diagram, because it's like, hey, if you guys could just slow down whenever you say anger, and instead of acting out of anger or assuming that it's just anger and try to figure out what's beneath the surface, then we can deal with that. Like if we slow down and we realize I am upset because I feel lonely, then we can do something about my loneliness. We can't do anything about my anger. I've just kind of got to get over that. We can do something about my loneliness. We can plan a date night. You know, you can come sit on the couch next to me, like whatever. We can get up early and eat breakfast together. But you can't deal with anger. If I'm feeling angry because I'm embarrassed, well, somebody who loves me can help me with my embarrassment, or the place where I felt humiliated. Maybe like you were talking about last night in the softball game. But if I'm just angry and walled off, then nobody can really do anything about that. And so we try to move past unproductive emotions towards something a little bit more productive, and that usually kind of does the trick.
Oh, my bad.
I think you've started a whole nother conversation about anger. I think we could do a whole show about anger, because I've dealt with anger in my life.
Yeah. Me too. 2 hands. And like Josh dad, if I can put my feet up too, I promise you I would. Man.
Yeah. And that's, like you said, that's the predominant emotion that men express. It's just an output. That's not the source.
And it's so easy for us to get there, to get to anger. And nobody understands this. And this is a little bit of a side tangent, but nobody understands this more than the news outlets, like the national news outlets. That's why I think so many men are worn down and just full of anger, is because so much of the way the news is packaged and presented to us, it's always tainted with politics. It's always tainted with, this fear of the other, this false victimization, all of this stuff. It's always tainted this way to bring about anger. And so I do think men kind of live in a world of anger. And then there are things that are really important, things like injustice and things like people being treated poorly, where we don't have any passion left to give that stuff, because we're angry about whatever the conflict of the day is.
Yeah, that's like the angry protesters going and burning down stuff and tearing up stuff. That's not the issue at the bottom. That's just
right.
Out. There's, like you said, it's the social unrest and just the fed up with this over and over thing. We're in 2021. We shouldn't be dealing with this type stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And that just that comes out, and most people don't understand. It's not okay to do that, but it is something deep within that.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. The fact that we talking about this, that means if everybody's in shambles like they are, when I say everybody, I mean the whole world, not just the 1 or 2 people. It's like the devil hates unity.
That's right.
And the fact that everything is disunified, that means his kingdom is jumping. If everybody can get on one accord,
that's right,
then we wouldn't have this problem.
That's right.
But the fact that people like the devil's influence better than God's, I call us the 3%ers, people like us, they have to sit back and wish we can talk about this all day.
Yeah.
But until they get it right here, it'll never change because, like you said, it's a root problem. Nobody wants to deal with that glacier is that's a deep thing. That glacier is real. Nobody wants to deal with underneath there.
Yeah.
They just shoot off at the point.
It's too cold down there.
That's right. It's dark.
It's real. You got to be real to be able. Okay, I'm not going there. But that hey, okay. Everybody can't let you stay on the headboard while Leonardo stay in the water. Everybody ain't built for that. They just want to stay on the. They want to stay on the safe. They want to be safe. Okay. Hey, that's a great analogy, though.
That's a good one. I'm gonna add that. I'm gonna add that to my diagram.
Yeah, he cared.
You got to go down.
And look, I joke all the time. My girl, she always say something to me. She be like, every time we come on, you wouldn't have gave me that, would you? And at the time, I'd be like, no, we're gonna get on there together. But then, factual, I'd be like, man, I think we both can't fit on there though. But you know, that's just the humor part of it. But me, I've been through so much, I give it a board. Because I just trust God to make it where they come with their whistle. I'll find me a whistle and try to blow it. But if not, I still trust it. Just little stuff like just small little stuff like that.
Tell that movie really made an impact on you.
Man, it's the glacier. It's the glacier. You made me see it. You made me see it from it. I opened my eyes up to a whole perspective.
Yeah. I think everything we said was a good groundwork for the understanding of emotional health. What is emotional health for a man, and why can't we express these emotions? Why don't we? For a second, if I will, before we wrap this thing up, can we talk about what it looks like to have healthy, emotional or good high emotional health? How do we do that?
Right.
Mr. Pat.
Right. There's a couple of things. I think there's nothing that you can do better for your own emotional health than to cultivate good, healthy friendships. I mean, I am more and more convinced that the key to a healthy marriage is for each spouse to have healthy friendships. And I don't know exactly how that is, but we need people in our life who can ask us the hard questions, but who have that they're not depending on us, like Steve, when you asked Josh, like, hey, are you okay? You knew that Josh, you could say, no, I'm not okay. And instead he's not like, hey, where's our next paycheck coming from? Or are you going to fly off the hand? Like what's going on here? Like there's not a dual relationship there. So we can be actually honest and open about that. And, a lot of things that I work with when I work with men, and one of the things that in my practice, I really have tried hard to help men who are trying to break away from pornography or being addicted to pornography or struggling with that. And one of the things that I think a lot of people have struggled with is accountability. As we understand accountability, only has limited results. It does have results, but the way that we've always understood it is that we need people in our life to go to after we mess up and we confess. And by confessing, they can wag their finger, then they can hug us and they can love us and pray for us. And then hopefully we won't mess up again. And I do think that biblically we're called to confess and all that stuff. But more than anything in our struggles, there's a slight tweak that we can make if we have people that we really trust that can make all the difference in the world. So a struggle with porn or struggle with alcohol or any kind of struggle that's beyond us is laden with shame. And so that's why we'll be accountable. We'll confess a couple of times. And then after that, we just find a better way to hide because we're ashamed of it. We don't want to be struggling with that. But what I encourage men to do with people who are safe and that they trust is to be pre-accountable to them. So whenever they know something that can trip them up or something that's been a temptation and a stumbling block before, make the phone call before you get there instead of after you've messed up. That way we're taking our fight to the people that we trust instead of taking our failures, and we can break the cycle of shame. So, I encourage them to be like, hey, I had a really terrible day at work. I'm driving home. This is usually a time when I drink too much or when I mess up or when I get on my phone and mess up. I want you to pray for me, but I also want you to ask me tomorrow where my mind went and how I spent this night. And that has really started helping men. So I call that pre-accountability. And I think that that's a real important part of, mental health, is that we can get out ahead of our struggles in that way.
And
Go ahead.
Oh yeah, you had said you was using the example for the drinking, and for the pre-accountability. But what I learned was when I stopped, I could see before I was gonna do something stupid because my mind was altered on the bottom. See, I was looking for my healing at the bottom.
Yeah.
And then I realized that at the bottom, wasn't nothing but the next bottom. So my point was that when I decided to let that stop being my crutch, I could call before.
Yeah.
Or I can say to my woman, I remember saying, look, can you I need you to come over here. I need you to come over here, because I wasn't strong enough to say no yet.
Right.
But I knew I was strong enough to see how I could get around it until I was actually healed. Because what people don't understand is when it comes to that bottle almost took me out. That's why I'm so serious about this. On the door it says wine and spirits. I don't know if you understand. Pastor, you know what spirits is. They are real. They are real. And what they did was they was tricking me. They were deceiving me to make me think that you do this right here because they doing this to you so you don't get got, or they don't love you, but you drink this right here, you ain't got to have no. I felt nothing for 10 years.
Right.
Nothing.
Right.
And I just like to get on here and say what that person really feeling and want to say, to let them know that you can make it out too. You just gotta. It ain't easy, but it can be done.
That's right. That's a good word. Good word. So pre-accountability works if you know your warning signs, right? So if you know the days you got to pass by the liquor store, that's when you want to reach out to people. So we got to, as men, another way to stay emotionally healthy is we got to know the warning signs. So we've talked about anger a lot. Women, when they get depressed, they look like depressed people in the movies in general. Generalizing, they look like, they're sad, they cry, they look sad. Men, when they get depressed, they don't usually look that way. When men get depressed, they get angry. And so if you know somebody who's just angry in all 360 degrees, there may be some depression that set in, kind of like the flu. Like it just kind of came in and it's kind of settled in. And so there's nothing wrong with that, but that's something worth addressing. If victimization is another thing, I think you said this a minute ago, Steady, is that if you're in a place where you're blaming everybody else and you're just got that victim mindset for everything, then that's a good sign that something's off. You can't be a victim and be victorious at the same time. And
That's
so
right.
I think a lot of times we can't see that. Isolation, living like a fool, where we only want the light to hit us at a certain angle. We don't want the light to hit all areas of our life. We want to keep our shadows. Those are all warning signs that, hey, we're leaving the road of mental health, and we're kind of in the ditch, so to speak. So hopefully we're close enough to people who can love us when we go there. We know the people that we need to reach out to: a pastor, a friend, counselor, somebody in our family. But those are the things to look out for.
Yeah, you got to have a good support system.
Right.
Nobody's gotten to where they're going alone.
Right.
There's no way. But this is a lot of what we talked about. That network, that has a lot to do with what this real talk with real men thing is. I wanted to go beyond, the talk show podcast or whatever. I want men that are watching it, I want them to be able to say, hey, man, this is something that I'm dealing with, and I'm glad that they can talk about it. I can do it too. You can make it through. And they share it with somebody else and say, you can make it through. And it's a cycle. You got, like Steady said, you got to get it in your heart. And once we understand where we're going wrong, once we understand what we're not doing right in life as men, just like you said earlier, he's like, am I doing this thing right? Because some days I feel like that. I'm like, man, I've never been this before. I've never been a father, husband, of these age children.
That's right.
So there is no script for it. You can go to people all day for advice, but it's a network.
Right.
It's not just going to one person or going to the one person in your house or talking to yourself. You do, of course, you talk to God, have that relationship there, but around your friends, it has to be positive. We got to have the positive influences in order to have the positive outcomes.
Right. And I would say anybody who's listening, who's like, I hear these guys talking about like times when they've struggled and times when they've been unhealthy, and I hear that, but that's not where I am right now. I would encourage anybody who's thinking that to themselves to then ask, well, do I have the right network around me in case that does come? The best day to plant a tree is 20 years ago. And so right now, if you're in a good place, this is the time to be investing in that network.
That's right.
Looking for other people to walk with and inviting other people to walk with you.
That's that proactivity. You gotta be proactive in your efforts. You're not going to get to the top or to wherever you're going, doing the same thing that you did or doing the same thing that you're doing right now. You gotta reach far ahead.
Mm-hmm.
But man, I appreciate you coming on with us. This has been enlightening.
Yeah.
And I think you may be getting a phone call from maybe both of us later. Hey, you got an opening on.
Hey, I just got one question though.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, are you okay?
I'm great.
Okay.
This has been a fun hour, so I'm doing really good right now.
Now check this out. The fact that this is what you do, how do you, or have you been in a session and realized that I need to work on that? That's bothering me too. Have that ever happened to you?
Oh yeah. Being a counselor is like being a time traveler. So there are times where we'll spend an hour talking about something that took 5 seconds of somebody's life, and then we'll spend 5 seconds talking about something that took 20 years of somebody's life. And a lot of times, you can kind of roll with it and kind of miss some of the emotional punches, but every once in a while you lean right into one, and it hurts, and so you keep your composure and you keep your eye on helping people with the goals that they're working on. But at some point we all have to say, no matter how skilled you are, no matter how deep your understanding is, and no matter how good of a game you can talk, we are not impervious to needs. And so I've gotten to where when that happens to me, after I try to figure out who I need to share that with in an appropriate way, because a lot of confidentiality happens around my job, but who I need to share my response with in an appropriate way, then I have to stop and I thank God that I'm still a human. I'm not some kind of professional robot here. I'm still soul and flesh and all those things. So yeah, it does happen. It hurts when it does, but it's also a gift too. It's a good reminder of the earthiness here. So.
Yeah, I just thought that was dope. I just had, because I know if I was a counselor, I would show you. My scars would be
sometimes
the lessons in my mind.
Yeah.
So I was just wondering how have you had to ever be transparent to get a point across because they couldn't see it?
Yeah, you do.
Okay.
Sometimes you do. There's a real human connection. That's like all we have. When we have a lot of research, we have a lot of tactics. I've got some cool, slick handouts. But at the end of the day, the thing that really offers healing is hope and human connection.
Yep.
And so that's something we also deal in as well. It's not easy.
That personal connection, that human connection, is what this show is about.
That's right.
With that person. So a lot of times we look in the mirror or look in the camera and talk to that person and say, you can make it too. You make that personal connection, just like President Biden did when he was doing the presidential debates, and he would turn and say, you America. But it's real. It makes you feel different when he does it.
Yeah.
He's like, talking to me? That's what we do that's what this type of thing helps people when we can't meet in person sometimes.
Right.
Yeah, and I wanted to keep going, man. And anybody, let's give a shout out. Any of your contact information, if somebody, needs this help, if somebody needs a counselor, what's a good way to contact you?
Yeah, so all my information is at patwardcounseling.com. And so you can reach me there or call or text me at 709-7714. And if I can help, I'll be glad to. If not, I'll help you find somebody who can.
Maybe in the editing, I'll put the contact
I
information.
like him. I like him. I like him.
Thank you, Steady. I like you too, man.
Yeah, that's see, a lot of people not gonna do that because they're gonna be so adamant about it. They say they want to help, but they really don't. But because I tell people all the time, I have people inbox, hey, on the God tip, how do you get through this? I said, bro, I might not be able to tell you the answer, but between my book, our Bible, the Bible, and my people I look up to that I know, I said, we'll find the answer. And the fact that you said, if I can't get to you, I'll lead you to, I'm done. Hey, look, this might be one of the, this is in the top 5 shows, right? I just want you to know that.
Well, thank you.
This is real talk. And so I said it out. If anybody got a problem with it, they can at me at Mark Webb Steadfast Smith on Facebook.
This has been Real Talk with Real Men. We do that sometimes when we say back to our scheduled program. When we say
Real Men, and we're back.
It's like a public service announcement when we say something serious. We like Real Talk. We just transparency, man. It's big. It's big on our show. It's big in life. You got to have it. All right, brother Pat. We appreciate you.
It was fun. Let's do it again.
As usual. We may be talking about something else pretty soon. I'll keep you linked up.
Let me know.
Being Real Talk with Real Men, I've been Josh McGlone, Big Steady, Mr. Pat. Take care of each other, take care of yourselves, and keep it real. Peace.